What's going on, guys? In this video, we're going to be going over how to close another 12 deals every single month with a setter. And this one's especially for you if you've ever just stared at the millions of dollars worth of pipeline value that you've created inside of your CRM. It's usually like the big number at the top. And then you've also looked inside of Stripe and you see that you've only actually collected a few thousands of dollars this month, or a few tens of thousands of dollars, and you've just gotten really pissed off because you're wondering why you haven't converted more. In other words, if you've ever sat there thinking, hey, if I just had somebody who could work every single lead I've ever gotten, I'd have zero worries about my growth, then this is for you. And before I get into it, if you're new here, my name is Dan Crowley. I'm one of the co-founders and head of sales at Client Ascension and ListKit, where our team's pulling over $1 million a month. I've taken thousands of sales calls myself, built elite sales teams, and helped clients grow from nothing to over 6 figures a month with the exact strategies I'm about to walk you through. And in this video, like I said, we're going to be going over and breaking down how you can close another 12 deals per month with your setter in as early as their first month. And guys, these aren't even crazy projections. Like, these aren't pie in the sky numbers. These are pretty regular. I'm not even factoring in if you have discovery calls or triage calls built into your process that a setter would take. If that's the case, they should probably be doing even more than that. A lot of the hard work is on your end, and I'm going to go into exactly what that looks like in a second. But my first point is that you should be having your setter work leads, not contacts, because that's going to make all these projections I'm talking about here possible. And warm leads are just way better than cold calling in terms of your setter getting the most out of their time when it comes to hours spent working to number of meetings booked. And I know this because my first role in sales was a real cold calling role, where it was just a cold list of contacts scraped from Google Maps. And the conversations were something like, ring, ring, hello, hey, this is Dan from so-and-so. And it's like, where, who, how the hell did you get my number? Because there's no intent that you're following up with this person. Now, when you're warm calling, it's relatively simple because you're always following up on something. So that idea of like, who the hell is this? How'd you get my number? It's usually not part of the conversation. And at some point they did show intent, right? So these are legitimately leads, not just contacts. So like I said here, leads over lists. So instead of focusing on just giving your setter tens of thousands of contacts on a list, focus on getting them 100 leads per month, and everything that we're talking about here can be possible. That's not to say you're never going to use contact lists from a place like ListKit, but what you're going to do is take that list of 10,000, run campaigns to them. Let's say you're doing cold email, or you're doing LinkedIn outreach, or you're doing other types of cold calling, right? And you're using like an outsourced agency for that, and you're generating leads, you're generating interest. And once that interest is generated, they're taking that person from lead to book calls. That's exactly what we're talking about here. Now, when you're doing that, because it works so much quicker than actual cold calling, in the timeline from whenever they start to whenever you're actually generating revenue from this, it makes this a commission only or majority commission based role. Where if it's like legitimately cold prospecting starting from nothing, that's not to say you can't do that either. That's just not how we run our teams. It's just going to be too much longer. It's probably going to have to be mainly base, less commission. So let's assume you're doing it my way. Now, if you also do it my way, and you're the one who's focused on generating the leads from the contacts through running paid ads, running cold email, running LinkedIn automation, what you're going to notice is that there's a lot less variance in performance from setter to setter. And if you lose a setter, it's not the end of the world. You can slot somebody in pretty quickly so long as your process is still producing leads. In other words, you have a lot more control here. So just give you quick examples so you know the difference. Examples of leads: ad opt-ins who have requested more information, positive replies to cold emails, positive replies to DMs or lead magnets, contacts in your CRM that have already shown interest in some way or another, triage calls, right? If that's a part of your process, that's an easy way to get these people more sets, more opportunities quickly, especially if you have just like a very high variance in terms of lead flow. And a lot of the times anyways, like your first call is just like a quick 10, 15 minutes to qualify them in the first place before a second more in-depth call. That's work that a setter can be doing. Now, examples of contacts: this would be a list of leads from the database or social media followers. And like, obviously you're still using a database like ListKit, or you're still using your social media followers. The difference is you're the one running campaigns, or you have your head of marketing or your head of sales ops do that. And then they take over from the positive lead once they've shown intent, just to get those people on your calendar and qualified and ready for the call. Or you have your social media followers, but you're the one who's sending out a lead magnet, getting these people to comment like, hey, send it over. And then once they do, that's exactly who your setter is working. So in short, you're having your setter focus on people who have already shown some intent. So long as you've got an average of at least 20 leads a day, in my opinion, you're ready to bring on a setter. Now, quick pause in the action. If you're an agency owner doing more than 30K per month and want to scale to 100K, 200K, 300K a month beyond, this is perfect for you. My program Olympia has helped countless B2B business owners scale with ads and build sales teams that close for you while you sleep. My client Davi hit 200K a month with our systems, and Andy even hit 500K a month. With way back when he started with us, he was at 70K a month. Anyways, click the link below, learn more about Olympia. Let's get back to closing deals. Now, second point, give them the script that they need to succeed. Because even though they are leads, you're probably not like top of mind for them yet. So they still need to have a really good process. To give you an example of what this would look like, you call somebody up, and because you're following up on something, this example is going to be for like people opting in from paid ads. It'd be something like, hey, Tom, this is Dan calling from Client Ascension. Yeah, you opted in to learn more about scaling an AI assisted agency. Does that ring a bell? If they say no, you're just going to say something like this: hey, no worries at all. And I'm not sure if you're actively trying to start or grow a business right now, but if you got 25 seconds, I'll tell you why I'm calling so we can see if it even makes sense to keep the conversation going. Does that sound fair? So that's basically how you lead in the conversation. Honestly, when you're following up on leads, most of the time you're just good and they say, yes, oh yeah, I remember I just opted in, or oh yeah, I just, checked that out last night. Cool, we're on to the next part. But for this opener here, because it is a pretty critical part, you want to pay attention to your pacing and your tonality. Pacing here, most people go too fast. It's like this weird psychological thing where because they got somebody on a call after they probably just made 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 calls that didn't pick up. They're like, oh my God, I finally got somebody. Let me get all my words out. But the faster you talk and try to get your point across too quickly, the more likely you are to get hung up on, right? In terms of tonality, just calm and confident. Like you want to sound like they should be expecting your call. You don't want to be overly salesy, overly bubbly. Like you don't want to sound like a used car salesman that's got one car left in the lot. You don't want to sound like somebody who's trying to like raise money from a fundraiser and you're like over the moon to be talking to them, right? Once you've got permission to have the conversation, now you're onto your short commercial. And you'll notice the best commercials speak to who this product is right for. So continue on the call, right? Somebody says, oh yeah, that does ring a bell. Cool. So again, I'm calling from Client Ascension, where we help most people scale an AI assisted agency by helping with their offer, lead gen, sales. Then we show them how to use AI for fulfillment so they can have better profit margins and spend 90% less time on the client work than they would otherwise. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. Yeah, most people come to us either wanting to launch an agency but need guidance, or they already have a business but lack of lead flow or fulfillment bottlenecks are killing their growth. Does that sound like where you're at, either of those? So I'm obviously telling them what we do. I'm telling them what we do it for. I'm trying to speak to a specific persona. These are probably like the two most common for us. And once I've confirmed relevance, which I just did up here, now we're on to the next steps. And the next steps are relatively straightforward and simple, but it is the majority of the call. So it's super important that they get this part right too. So first, you're going to want to find like the actual problem, because we kind of threw out these blanketed statements to make sure that this was relevant. That can almost apply to everybody who would be a good fit. But now we want to dig in on like, okay, so tell me what you're looking for help with. Let them talk. This is where like we had to get them interested, hook them in, confirm relevance. And now like the talk time's going to flip a little bit to their way. So an open-ended question like this is good. Them talking is good. Just shut up for a second. Okay, if they don't give you a good answer, hey, so like what's not working at the level that you want it to right now? Cool, just get them talking. Now, once we find the actual problem, we're gonna wanna clarify how their problem is impacting them. Got it, so have you been growing consistently, or is that problem you just mentioned been holding you back? Right, if obviously it's a priority for them, if it's a bottleneck, these are things that we need to know, but we also need them to know how important it is to just keep them engaged, interested in this call, and hopefully the potential next call. But once we got the problem, once we have the impact and we know it's like, okay, this is of importance to them and this is a problem that we can help with, now we're on to qualifying them, which like a very simple qualifying structure is called BANT: budget, authority, need, timing, very common in the sales industry. And their goal, the setter's goal, is to set you calls that you can pitch with full confidence to close, not to follow up months out. So if that's the case, like if somebody's just like, yeah, I'm looking into this for next quarter, like have them just stay in the setter's pipeline. That's what they're there for, is to just kind of keep, the leads and, obviously move them along and convert them at the right time for when they're ready to talk to you. So with the top half of the call, we've already got the need already. We already know that this is relevant. They have a problem that we can fix. Now we just need to build in questions to gauge the prospect's budget, not if they want to pay our prices right now. Like they haven't heard about the pitch, right? They don't know exactly what this is. So ask them if they're ready to pay. That would just be dumb. We just want to figure out if they have the budget, if everything looks perfect for them, would they be able to invest X into their business? And just depending on how high ticket you are, like the more high ticket you are, the less your price point is a selling point, the less you want to actually tell them what the real pricing is. But just getting a good range is helpful. Or even if, you don't want to scare them off right off the bat, sometimes if somebody is making enough revenue, like they're already budget qualified just by using common sense. So it's going to look different for everybody, but make sure that you are getting a couple questions in there about their budget. Authority, like do they have the ability to make a decision or at least direct access to the person that would? Like if you're selling software, like we've done, and we still do right now, like, yeah, you're not always going to get the CEO of the company, but you at least want to be talking to somebody who has some budget authority or has a direct line to the budget authority there, not somebody who just signed up for a free trial and like has access to basically nobody at the company and it's just like a remote SDR themselves. Timing. If everything works out, like this is a decision, hopefully, that they're looking to move on the next couple days, weeks, not months. Once again, for those people, just keep them in the seller's pipeline. So after we've done all this, after we've gotten our BANT qualifying done, now we're just going to want to frame the sales call, right? And this is kind of like the setter's pitch. If we're thinking about what a closer's job is to do, it's to get the person excited enough to commit to paying right now. A setter is to get the prospect excited enough to commit with real intention, emphasis on that, to the sales call. So they're basically just letting the prospect know that based on what they've heard, we can help this prospect. And the natural next step in the process is going to be to hop on with one of your consultants, advisors, with the founder, like whoever's taking the call itself, where they'll get a lot of value for ABC reasons. Even if they don't get started with us, they'll be pointed in the right direction. So once again, we want them thinking along the lines of like, okay, this person can help me. And if I do hop on this next call, which is the next step in the process, it's for the prospect's benefit, right? Like I will get value out of this, whether I close or not. right? Because that's just how we get the people to the call at the highest rate. Now, once we've actually locked in the appointment, so once we've done this and they're like, yeah, that is something I'd be interested. Of course, you're just throwing out a couple times, ideally as soon as possible, right? Like go for same day sets, go for next day sets, push for that as hard as you can. The further out that they're booked, the less likely they are to show up. But once they've said, yes, this time can work for me, make sure you're just doubling down saying something like, hey, and our sales team has just been super busy. So I do want to confirm that 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow does work for you, and work specifically for a Zoom call, because I know that you're working on your phone right now, but they've got a lot of stuff that they screen share throughout just to show you inside of the system. So you'll be able to be in front of a computer at that time. Cool. And does anybody else run lead generation at the company? That should be there as well. I've got the calendar open right now, so I could just type in the extra emails if you want me to time in on the invite. Cool. Awesome. And I know this may take a couple seconds, but it's super important just because all these guys on the other side, they have assistants and they like to delete appointments if it's not confirmed. Can you just take a second to just receive the email and just click the accept on the Google Calendar invite? Okay, awesome, John. Like you're ready to go. Sweet. And now we're just going to be going over to like, hey, what we're going to be sending over. So once the call ends, the setter is supposed to send assets that are going to either A, build trust, B, prep the prospect for the call itself, and C, and ideally you can do A, B, and C. It doesn't need to be an either or. Get them excited for that sales call so that their excitement doesn't dwindle enough to the point where, when 4 o'clock tomorrow rolls around, they're just not showing up. So pretty in-depth process here. But the next point is, okay, we've got the script. Now they need the tools. So with the tech stack, I really haven't noticed like a ton of differentiation between the different tools that I've used. I've just used a lot of these tools and then kind of just settled on the ones that work for our process, but it looks different for everybody. So by no means am I like, hey, you have to use these tools or you're going to fail. But for us specifically with like more dial heavy team focused roles, I like Allaware. Just with the way that it works, you can get tons of leads in there, tons of setters in there, and it creates like a nice first come, first serve environment because the first person who calls them gets ownership of the lead. They also have a power dialer feature, which is good. And if we're looking at like making over, 100, 120, 150 a day dials, like it just works well for that. Link, this is actually something that we give to our closers, but I've seen people use it successfully with setters as well. I'd say this is best when the lead volume is low and communication is pretty high touch. Like maybe there's a lot of stuff going on back and forth via text message. This is like giving your setter or closer an automated iPhone, which is pretty darn sweet, which is why we have our closers do it. So their pre-call text messages come through as an iMessage and it just appears blue, which automatically just screams more professional, right? So if your stuff is pretty high touch or there's a lot of back and forth via text, as opposed to always people getting on a call, yeah, I'd say Link is a great solution for that. If you don't have tons of leads and like you have to resort to using lots of contacts, or you have tons of low intent leads, I would say find one of those dialers out there that just has a really good parallel dialer, because that can go from a role where somebody's supposed to make 100 to 150 dials to like 300, 400 dials a day without them needing to be an absolute psycho, because I guess you could do it manually, but you'd have to be a sick puppy. It's more so just you can make that number of dials because it will ring 3-4 people at a time with just parallel lines. And the moment somebody picks up, the other ones will all hang up there. So we'll see they had a missed call from that number, but that can obviously let you get a lot more volume. But personally, we use Allaware and Link. Now, the real tools, because like these tools above, like I said, they are what they are. Find one that works for your process. The more important tool, I guess I'm trying to say, is the onboarding process and the ongoing management of these guys. So when it comes to training your staff and onboarding your staff, it's really not that hard to create your own internal sales team training for setters specifically. Just do it yourself for a couple weeks, even if it's with people inside of your CRM. Just kind of have recordings of what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and break down the purpose and the proper execution of each part of the script, from the beginning, the opener, to identifying the problem and measuring the impact and doing the BANT qualifying. So long as you've got a couple SOPs, like I said, of what to do, what not to do on the call, great. Then you should make an SOP for off-call performance. Like once this person is not on a call, what should they be doing? How should they be loading up leads into a power dialer? When somebody doesn't have a great phone number, but they do have an email, like where can they go to find a template to send that person an email quickly? What does it look like when you do set somebody? What does the post-call process look like? In general, though, it's pretty simple. Like what I want these guys to understand, especially in a commission heavy role or like a totally commission based role, your money is going to be made on the phone. So your time should either be spent on the phone or trying to get somebody on the phone. The only other things that are involved are just like team meetings, going through team training, and then just post-call messages once I do hit success and I do book that person in for a call, just to get them to show up. And then outside of that, like any other role, you're submitting your end-of-day numbers to a type form. Now, one more pause in the action. This is going to apply to a lot of you guys. Grab my full guide on how to hire A+ closers. Having poor closers is a great way to leak revenue, and you can't afford to mishire a closer specifically. Like the mishire cost of a closer is 10x that of a setter. So this guide's going to break down everything we do for our businesses that's helped us scale. Hit the link below, check it out. Last point here. Now, let's say we've got the leads. Let's say we've got the script. Let's say we've got the tools. Last thing here is you just need to have real clarity around what the KPIs look like. So there's no guessing on how to get those 12 clients per month. So what are your key inputs It's at least 20 leads a day, relatively straightforward. Right off the bat, if you have that, these guys can be making 100 leads or 100 dials per day. So to show you what that could look like is, okay, I got 20 new leads a day. I'm going to double dial all of them. That's depending on how many people pick up. It's probably going to be like 30 dials. Then with people inside of my CRM, you guys probably are sitting on hundreds, if not thousands of those people. Just have them work those people and have them hit that KPI of 100 dials per day right off the bat. Second day, cool, 20 new leads. Double dial all of them. Yesterday's leads that didn't book in, and then the CRM leads. Day 3, 20 new leads from today. Yesterday's, day 1, CRM leads. Day 4, 20 new leads. Yesterday's, day 2, day 1, CRM. You guys will say I say double dial here, just because when they're hottest, like that's going to be when they have the highest chance of conversion. So we always want to put the most focus on new leads. And then obviously if we have time to hit other leads or older leads, like that's of course better than nothing. But the reason we like to double dial at least on the first day is because if somebody has their iPhone, which most of the time when you're calling a mobile number in the US, it's an iPhone, and they have it on do not disturb, if you call them twice, it's going to bypass that setting and it's still going to ring them as normal. But you can see day 5 here, if I was to double dial the 20 new leads, yesterday's leads, day 3, day 2, day 1 leads, you'll see that by day 5, even if they are like hitting KPI, they're booking 4 appointments per day, there's still enough leads without even diving into the CRM, which there's probably no chance that they've gone through everybody yet, for them to be making at least 100 dials a day. So how do we take that 100 dials a day mark and actually turn it into 12 new clients? Like what actually leads into that? What are the inputs? How does it all break down? What does the link look like with all the different chains so we know where it's broken, how we can kind of go into course correct? Simply put, it's 80 meetings booked with a 60% show rate and a 25% close rate. So 80 booked, 48 live, 12 close. Right. So to give you a real example of this and how we train our team specifically, in their first full month, let's assume they're hitting that dial KPI and it's somebody that doesn't have some like weird anxiety about making dials and you've clearly communicated it. Cool. They're doing what they need to do. Here's what the KPIs would look like. Dials per month. Key metric, 2,000. I would say that the first KPI here I'm going to go over, dials, and the last one are going to be the most important. So assuming they're making 2,000. Now with connections per month, 200. What's a 10% connection rate? If they can't hit a 10% connection rate with leads, not contacts, typically it's because their speed to lead is too bad. So whenever I see somebody's at like a 9%, an 8%, a 7% connection rate, which is pretty shitty with leads, I'm always saying, okay, how quickly are you calling these people? And we track that number specifically so I can tell, but it's just a massive difference if somebody's calling them in 15 minutes or less versus like 30, 45 minutes, an hour later, right? So simple way. If you're not hitting this number, get to leads quicker. Now, next is the actual conversations. So out of the 200 people that pick up, at least 160 are getting into a conversation. Like they're not just hanging up right off the bat or very quickly while you're in your opener confirming relevance. They're not just stopping you and just hopping off. So this is like the amount of people that actually get into actually talking to you. It's probably going to be a talk time of like over 2 minutes and it is relevant for them, which with leads, like you can see numbers like this because it's going to be relevant for almost everybody that you talk to, hence why they are a lead in the first place. Now, if they can't hit 80% here, they need to work on their opener. So you can see like based on the metrics here, I know what to work on if they're missing. So if it's below 80%, they need to work on their opener. Their tonality needs to be better. Their pacing needs to be better. Maybe we need to re-script the opener itself, but obviously call reviews and just figuring that out is pretty simple because it's happening within like the first 2 minutes of the call. So you can rip through them very quickly. Now, book calls per month. So we have 160 people into a conversation, want to book at least 80 of them. So with this 50% convo to booking rate, if they can't hit that, this is basically everything else on the call. They need to work on identifying the problem, its impact, qualifying without losing the prospect. A third of these people of, the 160 here just simply won't be a good fit, which is fine. We don't want to talk to those people anyways. And then positioning this sales call as a valuable event. So they're not like, hey, yeah, I could be interested. Send me over an email. And of course, like there are specific objections that these guys need to know how to handle. Like if somebody is really, really pushing, I'm not getting on a call unless I need to hear the price. And like, just how do we do that? How do we balance like handling the objection versus deferring to the closer? Just like, hey, send me over an email. How do we get them to realize that sending over an email with all the information they've already consumed would be pretty much a pointless exercise? Like these are things that we work on. This metric specifically, this 50% convo to booking rate, this is probably where the majority of training comes in, just in the form of doing live call reviews with our team. So on our team meetings, like we're just linking up, throwing on a couple calls. And because they're setter calls, it's pretty easy and not super time intensive to go through. Now, all of this leads to a 4% dial to booking rate. So from the 2,000 people that we actually called and reached out to, 4% of them are booking in, right? So this is just the total number of meetings over the total number of dials. If they're above the dials KPI, meaning like they're taking care of their inputs, it's not a lack of effort, and they're above this KPI, meaning, yeah, maybe their opener is phenomenal, and then, maybe the back half of the call isn't as good, or maybe their opener is not as good, so they're not getting as many people in the conversations, but their back half of the call is super good, and they're getting like 60% of people, whatever it may be. Like, of course, we want to work on everything and perfect the process as much as possible. But if they're hitting this KPI, we're kind of just nitpicking at that point. Like this KPI and the dials KPI is 80-20 of the role. If they're missing this, Obviously, troubleshoot with the above. You're going to figure out where the actual link is broken in that chain. Now, how do these stats work? Once we've got all of that, of course, the thing that we actually give a shit about is the 12 clients. So with the 80 calls booked, show rate should be 60% plus. If it's below 60%, it's often just a setter ignoring obvious red flags. Like they don't want to do any objection handling at all or challenge the prospect at all. And they're just kind of shoving the appointment down the prospect's throat. There are going to be certain objections that they do need to handle. Of course, there's going to be buyer level questions that they should defer to the closer, but listen to the calls, make sure you're not doing anything that's just like, okay, here a giant red flag of this person not being serious about this at all. And they're like, yeah, you should definitely get on a call. And or just like lack of a good post-call process, meaning like they're not sending the person over anything to prep them for the call, keep them excited about the call itself, confirming the call, et cetera, et cetera. So that's usually what's going to happen there. It's either just they're ignoring red flags and they're just forcing the appointment where it actually doesn't belong, or there's just lack of a good process after they do book the call. Now, if the close rate is below 25%, and this is only assuming your typical close rate is about like 33% or higher, they're typically just not qualifying properly. So something's wrong with the bank qualifying that they're doing. They're not actually budget qualified, or they're not actually a decision maker, or they don't actually have like a real problem that we can help with, or this actually isn't something that they're looking to solve within days or weeks. It's more of like a few months from now, a few quarters from now. And you may be thinking, hey, Dan, if I'm usually closing at 33% or up, why can't this person match that? I mean, they could, but it just typically doesn't work out that way because these people are a little bit colder than the people who just book in regularly, especially if you've been dealing with like just inbound leads specifically, and you just have like a VSL book a call funnel and you're just introducing a setter, like of course, like their whole job here is to just increase the throughput. But obviously the people that just came through without you doing any work at all are going to be the warmest leads, right? These people they've already shown they don't have as much urgency. They've already proven that they need to be sold a little bit more to even get on the call in the first place. That's why it's gonna be a bit lower than your average close rate. But like this disparity between like setter close rate versus regular, like fully self-serve close rate being about like, 8%, less than a 10% difference. That's something we've seen as well. Anyways, all this is great. But if you have a setter, especially if it's a commission-based setter, you got to actually book these people, or you got to actually close these people that book in a call with you. If you don't, I mean, they're going to leave pretty soon, or you're going to starve pretty quickly. So if you feel like you're in a sales slump, or if you feel like you ever have been in a sales slump, watch my video on how to get out of it. That's all. Appreciate it, guys. Talk soon.